In this video, you're going to learn how to listen for changes to local storage. That's going to allow us to keep all of our tabs in sync. So if I have the same note open in multiple tabs, and I change the text to something like some new text, currently it's not reflected anywhere else, even though it is indeed saved. We're going to make sure it gets changed live. Currently, we would need to manually refresh the page in order to see the new data. To get this done, we're going to be listening for an event that allows us to do something when local storage changes. Now, in order to actually attach this event, we have to figure out what to attach it to. And what we're going to talk about is another global variable provided by the browser, and this is window. The window global contains all sorts of interesting things related to the browser window. It's a representation of it. Now, it also contains all of the other browser globals we've used. So let's go ahead and explore a few properties just to get our feet wet. For example, on window, we can get the browser's height and width. We use inner height for the height. In this case, if I print out inner height, I get a number back, the value in pixels, 646, and I could do the exact same thing for the width, window dot inner width, that one 628. Now, if I were to actually change the browser's dimensions and then re-access that property, we can see we now have an updated value. We went from a browser of 628 wide to 753. So we're going to be able to use the window object to get all sorts of interesting information about the window. Now, on window, we also have all of the other globals made available to us by the browser. For example, on window, we have console, like we've been using with console.log. So we have window.console.log, and we could print a message like test. When I run it, I can see that test shows up. All of our other globals live on window as well. We have window.document. Now, we can even prove that they're the same by checking if window.document triple equals, right here, document. What do we get back? True. These are objects, so we know that means they're the exact same object in memory. Now, we could use window.document, but we do have the shorthand document, and we're going to continue to use that since they're the exact same thing, only with less characters. Same thing with console, local storage, and any other browser global we've been accessing. Now, this is not exactly what we're going to be using window for. We're going to be using window to attach an event listener to. There are certain event listeners that don't really make sense on a visible element on the page. If I want to watch local storage for changes, I don't really want to attach that to any of these. Well, we can just attach it to window as a whole, and you can think of this as a way to attach a global event. So let's mess around with this. Over inside of our notes edit file, we are going to attach a new event listener, not to a specific element, but to window as a whole. Now, we're going to use add event listener just like we've done for every other event listener we've set up. And for the moment, let's just use the click event, something we've already explored. I'm going to set up a function. We'll get our event argument. And then inside of our function body, I'll just console.log clicked or some sort of generic message. If we save this, we can see when exactly this fires. It fires when I click anything. If I click here, we get the message. Click over here, we get the message. If I click our inputs, we get the message. We've essentially set up a global event listener to run when anything on the page gets clicked. Now, we're not going to be using the click event for our purposes. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. What we're going to be using instead is a special event called storage. The storage event fires when any of the data in local storage changes. This is going to allow us to update what the user sees. Now, it's important to note that the storage event only fires on the other pages. So if I have two tabs open and tab 1 changes local storage, this function isn't going to fire for tab 1. It's only going to fire for tab 2. So right here, let's just have this say some data changed. Then we're going to go ahead and move into the browser and we are going to change some data. I'll refresh both tabs just to make sure they're starting from the exact same place. And I'm just going to add a few characters onto the end. I'll add a couple of exclamation marks. Now over here we can see we've gotten no special output, and that's okay because this is the page doing the manipulation, which means it already has the latest data. It saved the data. But our other tab, this one does not have the latest data, and we can see we got our message. Some data changed, and we got it twice because we added two new characters on to the note body. So now that we have this function firing, all we need to do is access the latest data, which lives on the e event argument, and then render it to the screen. We're going to update both the input and the text area. Now let's go ahead and toss a debugger right here so we can see exactly what we get on that e argument. All I need to do is change the data in one of the tabs, and the other tab should have its debugger triggered. Right here it did. And we're just going to dump e to the console. Right here, e. When I go ahead and dump e, what do I get? I get back an object with a whole bunch of different properties. Now, a lot of these would look similar to the other events we've worked with before, but there are a few specific to the storage event, and the ones that we're really going to focus on are these three right here. We have key. The key that changed was notes, and we have its new value, this new array sitting right here. We also have the old array down below. So in this case, the body is some new text with a at the end. That's the new data. The old data was some new text without the a at the end. So what we're going to be able to do is use this to get the new data. We're going to set everything and make sure to update the inputs accordingly. Let's go ahead and get that done. And to kick things off, I'm just going to delete everything we currently have inside of that callback function. The first thing we're going to do is make sure the key that changed is the key we actually care about. Now, currently, our application just has a single key that we're using, just the notes key. But if we did add other local storage keys in, if we were storing other data, we would want to make sure that we only ran this specific code when the correct key changed. So if e.key equals, in this case, notes. So that's going to make sure that the value right here is indeed notes. Now, if it is indeed notes, this is where we're going to run all of the code. If it's not, we're going to do nothing. The first thing that we want to do is parse the data stored on new value. We're going to be using JSON.parse to get that done. I'm going to parse e.new value, and we're going to store this on the notes array up above. Now, the notes array up above is indeed a constant, which means we can't reassign it. I'm going to switch this over to let, and I'm also going to switch note over to let, since this is going to get reassigned as well. So at this point, all we do is we update notes. That is the equivalent of this line here. We still want to perform all of the actions for these lines though. Given this new data, we want to make sure the note exists. If it doesn't, we will redirect them. If it does, we'll set up the inputs. Imagine if the data changed because the note you're viewing got deleted. We're going to make sure we redirect you back to the home screen. If the note didn't get deleted and it was still found, we'll just update the inputs with the latest data. So what we can actually do is take these lines right here, copy them to the clipboard, and paste them verbatim just below the one down below. Now what we have here is a bunch of duplicate code. Duplicate code is bad because it should be broken out into a single place, in this case a single function call, and we will get to that. We're going to explore some more advanced strategies to handle a couple of edge cases with this code later in the course. For now though, it's okay to have a little bit of duplicate code in, as long as we're aware that it's a problem and we have a plan to overcome it, which we do. So for now, we should have syncing across our editing pages. If I go ahead and save the notes edit file, we can see that the data over here is some new text AS and the same over here. I'm going to go ahead and switch this up completely to something like go get some lunch. Now, when I go over to the other tab, we can see that as I'm there, go get some lunch shows up. I could even take this tab and break it out into its own window so we can view both at the exact same time. I'm going to switch back to the note tab in both. And as I update the characters down below, we can see the text area up above responds. This would also be true if I was viewing the home page and I changed the title. So if I go to the home page and I change the title, right now we're not actually going to see any updating happening because the home page doesn't listen for the storage event. We're going to go ahead and wrap this video up by fixing that. So as I change the title in the editing page, it actually is reflected over in the notes page. Let's go ahead and start that process. I'm going to drag this back up so we have both of our tabs inside of the same Firefox window, and we're going to add the storage event over to the notes app file down below. Window, not document, excuse me, window.add event listener. We are listening for the storage event. We're going to set up our function, our event argument, and our function body. In here, we're going to start off much the same. If e.key equals notes, then and only then will we actually run some code. Getting this done is going to be your challenge for the video. You're going to need to go through 2 steps. First up, you're going to have to parse the correct data off of that event argument, and you're going to update the notes array up above. Then what you're going to do is go ahead and re-render the notes list using render notes, passing in the latest information. Now you can test that things are going well by keeping the home page open over here and keeping an edit page open over here. As you change this, the changes should be reflected over here. Currently they are not. By adding just 2 lines of JavaScript, you should be able to set it up to actually change things. All right, take some time to knock this one out. Pause the video, test your work, and when you're done, click play. All right, let's get to it. Up above, the first thing I'm going to do is swap out notes from a const to let, since we are going to be reassigning it. Down below, we are going to reassign it. I'm going to set notes equal to something brand new. I'll be using JSON.parse to parse e dot, and here we have new value. This is where the new storage value for that key exists. The next thing we needed to do was to just render the list using render notes. I'm rendering notes. Which notes? These notes with which filters? The filters. Perfect. So at this point, we're all done the challenge. That was a super easy one, but I did want you to go through it on your own so you can see what actually it takes to get some pretty cool feature wired up. It really just takes, 6 lines of code to add in this live rendering of data. So over here, we have our really messed up title. I'm going to break this out into its own page once again so we can see both side by side. And then I'm just going to edit the title. So this is a new course idea, and you can see that as I type it, it gets reflected up above. Now, if I were inside of that edit page for that one, I would also see the change there. We already set this up. So I have changes being reflected across the application. As the app data changes, we can re-render all of the screens, making sure that no one's ever viewing out-of-date information. The same thing is true if I were to remove a note. Here I'm viewing the same note in both tabs. If I delete it over here, as expected, I get brought back to the home page. But I also get brought back to the home page over here, which is a nice touch. This is going to make sure that a user is never in a place where what they're looking at is irrelevant and out of date. All right, that is it for this video. By using the storage event on window, we were able to watch for changes to local storage and respond accordingly. Remember that the storage event does not fire for the page that actually changed local storage. It's only going to fire for the other documents, which is exactly what we want. We already have our updates because the user typed them. We don't need to update the page that the changes happened on. We need to update the other pages, the ones that now contain out-of-date info. All right, that's it for this one. I will see you in the next one. We're going to start talking about dates so we can wire up the sorting ability for the Notes app.